Welcome everybody. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my exact protocol on how I cured my PTSD, the full, what I call closed loop healing system down here, and how it works so that you can achieve full recovery. So you're fully healed by the end of this. Now, I learned this from thousands of hours of research, thousands of hours of processing personally my own trauma. And over the last 8 years, I've helped over 2,000 other trauma survivors heal as well. And I call this my unbreakable full recovery system, because if you follow this, there is no way that you won't heal. Since this is a closed loop system, you cannot leave this system until you fully heal. The only way that you leave this system is if you heal. Now, this isn't just a theory, and it isn't just something that I personally did. Like I said, I did this with 2,000 other people, and it's been very successful. So I'm just hoping that it can work for you as well. Now, with every system, the very first thing that you need to understand is that every system exists within an environment. And in this case, your environment, it does include your physical space, the people that you surround yourself with, the information that you consume, the thoughts that you habitually have. All of those things are things that I consider to be within your environment, and everything in your environment has a direct impact on the efficiency of the system here. So if you have a bad environment or a traumatic environment or an environment where you're around a bunch of abusive people or a very triggering environment, then it's going to lower the overall efficiency of this entire system here. Whereas if you have a neutral environment, the system will work okay. But if you have a supportive environment where you have positive people around you, minimal triggers, then it's going to just make this system hum and make it super, super efficient. So the first thing that I always like to do with people before diving into any of this processing is to stabilize and optimize their environment here so that when we do actually get around to the processing, they are in the best state possible to actually be successful. So the very first thing that you want to do before even diving into the processing is take a look at your environment and optimize it to make sure that everything that you're going through for the rest of processing is good to go. Now, the first place that we start in regards to the system is here with an unprocessed trauma. So we take an unprocessed trauma, or it can be traumas, and then we input it into this first system here, which is our trauma mapping and tracking system, where we track on a macro and on a micro basis. And we identify all of the different traumas that you've experienced. We map all of them out. We map out all the emotions, all the beliefs, and we track everything on a global level and also on a local level as well. So we track how you're doing overall. And then we also track each individual trauma, each individual emotion, and each individual belief. I know that sounds very complicated, and that's why I recorded an entire video on how to do just this one step, like very detailed. I break down everything. So I recommend watching that. And this video is called I Cured My PTSD by tracking these 3 things. So you can check that out on my channel. But after you map everything out here, the next step is going through a system to select the right processing tool for the trauma that you're going to focus on. So we map out a trauma. We find one trauma that we're going to focus on, which is going to be this one here. And then we have to go through and select the right tool for the right job, because some tools, they work well for some traumas where other tools don't. So there are different components to trauma that will determine the tool that you want to use. So there are 5 core components that make up every trauma. And I always remember it like be meat. I don't know what be meat means, but it helps me remember it. So the first thing is beliefs. The second one is memories. The next one is emotions. The next one is actions. And the last one is thoughts. So these are all the different ways, the 5 different ways that a trauma affects you. And each one of these can be their own entry point to processing. So a lot of people, what they do when they try to address a trauma is that they typically find one of these parts, or they focus in on one of these parts, which it might be memories, and then they use one specific tool to process the memories, but they don't ever focus on the emotions, the actions, the thoughts, or beliefs. And if you want true holistic healing, you need to be able to address all of these things. So depending on what knowledge you have here, your level of awareness, and also the level of distress with each of these components, that will determine which tool you want to use, because you'll want to use a tool that is specific for dealing with the part that you want to address. For most people, emotions is always a great place to start, because the emotions will always be there, and emotions are always going to be the doorway to every other piece of information, like the memories, the beliefs, actions, and thoughts. Now, the tool selection itself is a little bit outside of the scope of this video here, but at least you have a good fundamental understanding of the pieces. So once you have the pieces there, you want to select the best tool for you, and there are really 4 core session types that I walk people through. The first one here I call bilateral processing, which is similar to EMDR. The second one here is protectors, which is similar to shadow work or IFS. The fourth one here is introspective healing, which is a logical framework that I developed to think through, identify the root cause of a trauma, and to solve that problem in a logical way. And the fourth one here is really about challenging beliefs. So identifying the core belief that was caused or created from the trauma and really challenging that and changing that over time. So those are the 4 session types that I have. Now, you don't need to use these 4 tools. These are the 4 tools that work the best for me, and again, with all my clients over the years. And I will do specific videos on each one of these tools moving forward. So if you want to get more in-depth guides on these tools, just make sure to subscribe and you'll get notified for when I release those. But the most important thing, at least when you're starting out in the beginning, is you don't need all 4 necessarily. You just need to get started. So even if you, let's say, don't even have the tool selection system, you just have one of these tools, you can bypass the tool selection and just go straight to the one tool that you have and then you can still use this system. And if you want to learn like a very simple way to process trauma, I do recommend this video down here, which is called How to Self-Cure PTSD. I know, no BS guide that I recorded. And in this, I walk you through the 2 fundamentals of processing trauma. So if you want a tool that you can plug in right now, right away, and have your first, let's say, session type, go watch that video for a more in-depth guide. So after that, so what we have here so far is we have the trauma mapping that goes into the tool selection. If you don't have a tool, you just use whatever tool that you have. And then after you do your session, you come over here and you update your trauma mapping on a macro and a micro level. So let's say before the session, you were at a distress level of 10. And then after the session, after you go through the processing tools, your distress level might be a 9. So we see a 1-point reduction in the distress level after going through this cycle once, right? So then what we would want to do is update our tracking sheet and write down that the trauma that we were working on has reduced down to a 9. And then after that, we reach a decision point here and we ask ourselves, is this trauma fully processed, which means a distress level of 0 and a believability of 10. If you want to, again, know more about those specific data points, go check out my metrics video here. But distress level is a subjective measurement of the level of distress that this trauma has. So I'm going to focus more on the distress level for this video, but if you want to learn more, you can, again, check out that tracking video I talked about. So if your trauma is fully processed, which in this case, it's not because it's still a 9, then you would go down the no branch here, where you would have a partially processed trauma. And then we would take that, we would loop around, and we'd go back to our system selection tool. We would go back through, we would complete another session, and then the distress level over here would not be a 10, it would be a 9. And then same thing over here. Maybe after the session, it would go down to, let's say, a 7, which again, it would not be processed. So we'd go through the no loop again, and we would process it again and again and again and again and again. We would continue that loop until the distress level here was a 0. And once the distress level is 0, that one singular trauma is fully processed, which means we then go up to this node where we have a fully processed trauma, and then we reach another decision point here. Is there more trauma to be processed? And is the global distress level 0? So this basically is a question that's asking, am I fully recovered? Have I fully recovered? Is there more trauma? Do I have more symptoms? And is my global distress level 0? I experience no distress. Or we could say a 3 or below as well. So if it's, actually there's a little mistake here. It should be not 0. So let's say in this case, is there more trauma to be processed? Yes. Then what we would do, we would go back here. We would identify a new unprocessed trauma. We would map out that trauma. And then we would bring it back through the tool selection again and continue this loop again and again and again and again and again until this new process trauma is complete. And then we go through and we ask ourselves again, is there more trauma to be processed? If there's more, yes. We identify what the new unprocessed trauma is. We map it out. We select the tool. We continuously process using that tool until the distress level is 0. And we keep doing that until all new unprocessed traumas are gone and that there are no new traumas. And then at that point, you are fully healed. Now, if you want me to walk you through this entire process here, you can click a link in the description to check out my program, Broken to Unbreakable. But the most important thing is I wanted you to get value out of this video here. So if you liked it, hit a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.